The Megami Tensei spin-offs are weird, and that's exactly why I love them. Not just because they're good, but because of how random they can get. Games like Jack Bros, Shin Megami Tensei 9, and the Persona Rhythm games have all carved out unique legacies. But what about the other spin-offs that didn't? Well, today, we're digging up one of those obscure games in Megami Tensei, Demikids Puzzle de Call, a Japan-exclusive puzzle game released on the Game Boy Advance in 2003 with a lot more charm than you'd expect, and it's time to see where it fits within the rest of the Megaten series. Make sure to like the video and subscribe as we review and rank every Megami Tensei game, and I'll forever be at your service. I can't say I wouldn't be surprised if you've never heard of Demikids Puzzle de Call, because up until this video, I sure as hell didn't. It's a pretty unique entry in Megami Tensei, and that's a spin-off of the Demikids Light and Dark book games, which are already unknown as is. To this day, Puzzle de Call remains untranslated and exclusive to Japan, making it one of the most obscure and least documented entries in the franchise. Even finding good Japanese sources were hard to come by while doing research for it. So yeah, outside of the obscure mobile games, this is one of the most forgotten Megami Tensei titles out there. Even the Megaten wiki seems to be missing details or has some information wrong about this game. Aside from playing a few of the other Demikids titles and reviewing Red and Black Book, I went into this game pretty much blind. And other than knowing it was a puzzle game, I honestly didn't have many expectations. But I found it to be a lot more enjoyable than I expected. On the surface, Demikids Puzzle de Call doesn't seem like much, just a simple top-down puzzle game in style of Sokoban. Despite that simplicity, there's actually quite a bit going on that makes it more than just some quirky novelty. And as someone who genuinely enjoys puzzle games, I was surprised by how much effort not only went into the puzzles themselves, but into actually capturing the Demikids charm behind it. What really stood out was the charming presentation, the integrated demon collecting, and puzzles that were genuinely fun and sometimes even a bit challenging. Maybe the most surprising of all was that despite being a puzzle game, there's actually a light narrative going on here, lightly weaving in some original story elements from the titles themselves, making the game go beyond just clear the puzzle and move on. Featuring the protagonists from Demikids Light and Dark book, Akira and Jin, alongside their demon partners. The game starts off with the group responding to a distress signal from a mysterious village. Upon arriving, they find the town to be completely deserted. While trying to figure out what happened, they stumble upon a miniature version of Valhalla, getting pulled inside and separating everyone. From here, you'll play as one of the two demons, Rand or Gale, having to take on a number of puzzles while trying to reunite with everyone. Shortly after, it's revealed that this miniature version of the village was created by Azrael and that everybody inside is trapped, adding an additional task of saving all the villagers and a final boss figure to take on. From my understanding, this seems to be like a set of events that may occur in the Demikids Light and Dark book games. It's a neat way to tie this spin-off back to the main series, even if lightly. I should mention I have yet to actually complete either of these games, so I'm not sure how much these really tie together, if at all. That said, since you can choose between two characters, there are technically two different routes you can take. However, not much changes in terms of the main story, with the only noticeable differences being the character interactions and some dialogue. The puzzles and difficulty will also vary quite a bit depending on your choice. That aside, seeing that this is a filler game, there isn't that much else going on within its story. It's a pretty complimentary piece that keeps things engaging while not taking away from the main attraction, which is the puzzles themselves. And I think the game delivers here for the most part, with its Sokoban style gameplay working extremely well, keeping the main objective simple yet challenging, while the puzzle layouts are nicely designed and introduce new mechanics and obstacles at a steady pace, with it dividing the map into 5 different areas, each made up of multiple rooms filled with puzzles you'll need to solve in order to move on. Being that this is a puzzle game, the general goal is simple. Get from point A to point B by moving blocks, rotating walls, or controlling multiple characters on the screen to reach the portal that leads to the next puzzle. But what really makes the puzzles feel unique is the demon collecting aspect layered behind them, adding demons to the puzzles for you to collect, bringing an extra layer of challenge and personality to the gameplay. There's also a demon compendium on the title screen to track how many you found. While I didn't go out of my way to collect every single one, I still found it to be a cool idea that added some replay value. What's also a nice bonus is that you can choose to play as one of them instead of Rand or Gale. Personally, I wish that newer games would do something like this instead of just adding costumes. To keep the focus on the puzzle elements, demons do disappear after a certain number of steps, with a gauge at the bottom of the screen giving you a general idea of how many moves you have left. Technically, you're never told the exact number of moves you have, but since there's a counter next to it, you can just track it and restart the stage if needed. Really though, this is a pretty fun mechanic that blends collecting with puzzle solving, making the puzzles feel more dynamic and memorable. But aside from their collecting factor, demons actually serve a more practical purpose, acting as extra lives during the boss fights at the end of each area, if that's what you want to call them. Honestly, to me, the boss fights were a bit underwhelming. You're basically just walking across lit tiles to deal damage while avoiding slow, telegraphed attacks. According to the wiki, switching between demons will change your affinities and weaknesses. While the compendium does show the affinities and race of the demon, this has no significance to the actual gameplay itself. At least I didn't notice anything. During the boss fights, you need to step on every tile regardless, so I'm not really sure how this would work. It also states that the boss's health heals over time, but I didn't notice this at any point either. While I think these are still nice additions that add something different, they're not the most engaging. There are a few puzzles for you to do while avoiding attacks, but they're not the most challenging. Adding something simple like a timer, smaller minions on the screen, or building up enough SP to launch an attack would have gone a long way here. Even just making the attacks from the bosses a bit quicker would have made them feel more boss-like. My biggest issue though is that if you do die during one of these fights, you'll have to restart from the very beginning and clear all the puzzles again, which for the later stages, this can be very frustrating. But given the amount of extra lives you can get from the collected demons, you should have enough cushion to never experience this. And once you've cleared the boss of this area, you'll move on to the next one with a new theme, mechanics, and more puzzles. Personally, I like that the game decided to give each area some sort of theme. The differences, while small, do add some variety. It's just enough to keep things feeling fresh without overcomplicating the presentation, breaking up some of the repetition that comes with puzzle games. That said, some of the areas still do feel repetitive. Certain obstacles like the water, lava, and poison pits function exactly the same. You just drop a block to fill in the gap and cross them. Since the puzzles are pretty quick paced, it isn't a huge deal, but it's worth noting. Though something that may trip up a few gamers is how the puzzle paths aren't exactly linear. You'll often encounter a room with multiple branching routes, but not all the teleporters are accessible depending on where you enter the room, meaning you might have to leave some unexplored areas behind and doing a bit of backtracking later. This may be a bit frustrating for some, but personally I found it to be pretty clever, as it maximizes the full potential of the puzzles and extends the gameplay even further. This experience also depends on who you choose at the beginning of the game, with Rand's playthrough being more challenging, while Gale's is a bit more friendly. Outside of this, there isn't that much more to talk about the puzzles, but the game does bring a bit of replay value here as well, like replaying the other routes, collecting all the demons, or diving into the puzzle challenges in link cable multiplayer, which are features that probably didn't get used much, but are always welcomed. But really, all of this comes together pretty nicely for a solid puzzle game with a few extra options and challenges to do if you want. Beyond the core gameplay, the artwork and music are about what you'd expect from a spin-off of a spin-off. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it gets the job done for the most part. Visually, it's a clean, colorful, and charming game, with everything blending together pretty well. It's easy to make out all the puzzle pieces and characters on the screen, the menu navigation is simple even if you don't know Japanese, and the animations, while minimal, are fine for the most part, creating a pretty smooth experience overall. The demon sprites and character designs are obviously reused, which I don't have a problem with. While the chibi designs might not be for everyone, they do fit the Demikids aesthetic well. As for the OST, this falls in a pretty typical Game Boy Advance territory. Simple, somewhat limited, but good enough. Most of the music is catchy, but not that memorable. Though I did find some of the soundtracks to be a bit too laid back, not really enhancing the experience that much. Honestly, I think they would have just been better off reusing the OSTs from the previous Demikids games. There isn't a huge variety of tracks, but they at least shift between areas. And the boss music is the only time where things really get a bit exciting, but it's not really enough. Though it may not be the absolute best of Megaten, for a puzzle-focused spin-off, it gets the job done, with a lot more charm than you'd expect from something this low profile. That said, since this review is likely to be on the shorter side, I feel this is a good chance to talk about what Demikids Puzzle Decall could have done better and a few things I wish they included. I should stress that for the most part, this is a good game. At least a good puzzle game. But of course, there's always ways to improve it looking back. As I mentioned when talking about the boss fights, having these parts of the game in particular be more than just a puzzle would have gone a long way here. Just having enemy minions roaming on the map or building some gauge by stepping on the tiles to attack would have been a fun gimmick that made things more engaging. While the screen is rather small causing some limitations, just having something else for these stages would have made a huge difference. The other thing I would have really liked to have seen was having callbacks to the other Demikids games. While this is a budget-friendly title, I would have loved a way to add all the characters from the Demikids series here. Really, something like this could have been done without sacrificing too much, especially since a lot of them already cross over with the other games as extra content. In fact, the main characters from Red, Black, and White Book are featured in Light and Dark Book, so there's really no reason they couldn't include them here. Even with just some small cameo or unlocking some character sprite after beating one of the routes would have been really cool to me. Again, as it is, the game is fine, but I certainly wouldn't mind these ideas being incorporated to make it a bit more better or interesting. But with that said, there isn't that much else to dive into for Demikids Puzzle Decall, so let's just get into my final thoughts and ranking for this game. Now, this is a weird one to actually grade, and I struggled with this decision a lot more than I probably should have. Puzzle Decall is a fun game that I honestly enjoyed. It's simple, has some charm, and there's a lot more effort in the puzzles and presentation than you'd initially think. Taking the beer goggles off for a second though, this ranking isn't just about how good it is on its own, it's about how it holds up in context of the entire Megami Tensei franchise. If I were grading it as a standalone title, or even just a Game Boy Advance puzzle game, things would definitely be different here. But let's be honest here, compared to the innovation, impact, and so much more that other Megaten games bring, Puzzle de Call just doesn't stand with them. It's a filler title, a spin-off of a spin-off. And while there's nothing wrong with that, it also brings barely any story, has a weak connection to the rest of the series, and has no influence on Megami Tensei whatsoever. So while I genuinely did have fun with it, and it does get a light recommendation from me to anybody who enjoys puzzle games or is curious about obscure and forgotten titles, I have to place in the E tier. It isn't a bad game overall, just one that gets lost in a series full of heavy-hitting titles that ultimately leads it to being nothing more than a footnote of Megami Tensei. With that said, that wraps up my review of Demikids Puzzle de Call. Let me know the most obscure Megami Tensei game you played or heard of. And if you want to hear my opinions on a different Demikids entry, then make sure to check out my review on Demikids Red and Black Book by clicking the link on the screen, and I'll forever be at your service.